Now, whether you've watched Rudy once or 100 times, and for people at Notre Dame, it's probably closer to the latter than the former, right? Notre Dame in film and television is definitely a popular subject, and we've been debating what are the best all-time moments of Notre Dame on the silver screen. And joining us now are two professors from the Film, Television, and Theater Department, Don Crafton and documentary filmmaker Ted Mandel. And before we get into this, I got to put you guys on the spot a little bit. I recently had my third child this month, and I've been waking up every morning feeling kind of old these days. But then I come in here and I see two guys who taught me 15 years ago. It puts a little spring in my step. But it's
now
great.
Who's old?
Yeah,
now
yeah.
Who's feeling old, right?
It's definitely great to see you guys both here. And again, on the topic of Notre Dame in cinema and in television, it's something that keeps popping up. And so we're curious, what makes Notre Dame such a part of pop culture?
I'll defer to Don on this one.
Well, it's a legend. It's one of the great stories of athletics, of the triumph of small school over adversity. It's a Catholic story. It's a story about America, you know. It's a story that everybody grows up with, whether they're into sports, regardless of where they live or anything. It's just part of what we are.
You know, Peter, what I was thinking is that you think of Rudy and you think of Knute Rockne, All-America. Yeah. And what you have is you have Notre Dame associated with two characters who people really love. And two characters who are, A, passionate and very caring. And, you know, I think that really describes Notre Dame, is that it's not really Notre Dame, it's the people at Notre Dame. And by having those kind of enduring characters that, A, we're rooting for, but these are people in Rudy's character and in Knute Rockne's character who are very passionate and they're very caring. And I think that describes just about every one of these people behind the cameras.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're here.
I think the other thing that blends well in the pop culture, and Ted, I know you run into this a lot in the digital media side, is that at least athletically, Notre Dame has a lot of these Notre Dame moments that we like to talk to them. I mean, in Rudy, for example, it's just a play, but it's become an iconic play. And how all these great moments in athletics, they make for good TV and good film.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have, you know, it's the underdog. I mean, I think that's what Notre Dame has always been, the Fighting Irish, the underdog character, the person that we really root for in the end. And I think that's what people love in filmmaking. They love someone they can root for.
And these films are also a promise of someone who comes out of a place where there's teamwork, there's brotherhood, there's a sense of belonging together, and you can join up and you can win against the odds. So that moment in Rudy where this little guy's picked up and carried off the field, or you know, any of the locker room speeches, and Knute Rockne, or this other film nobody's ever heard of called The Spirit of Notre Dame, 1931. You have these defining moments, and I think that story is the story of Notre Dame, this little small school in the prairie that somehow expanded and became triumphant in athletics and in academics, and it's a story that everybody wants to believe.
But you mentioned the camaraderie and the brotherhood. That's very much Notre Dame, from the dorm life to the life in the classrooms. You may even see it probably more in your department than most, the collaboration between students on film and video projects. It's very, very it's very prevalent. We've talked about some of the things that we all love. What about some of the myths that persist about Notre Dame in television and film? What are some of those?
Rudy and Knute Rockne.
Yeah, exactly.
Knute Rockne. I was going to say Knute Rockne and Rudy, but
but I think it's, you know, it's great storytelling, and you know, it's more about the story than whether or not the character was exactly how the real person was. And you know, you were a filmmaker, right, Pete? Back in the day. Were you in Rudy?
I was. Yeah, I may have been in the background. I was in the stadium when they did the Georgia Tech stuff, but you know, one of 60,000 proud.
We've had a lot of students who actually were in that film. I was actually here when the film was made, and we have a lot of students who, from our department, go on and work in Hollywood and are behind the scenes a lot. So even the process of filmmaking, process of making that film, Rudy, was a collaborative effort.
I actually made a film that Don starred in, but that's getting way off track, so we won't.
You were the best director I ever had, and this was certainly my starring vehicle, thanks to you.
You must
You're
have,
a real
you must
star
have one
director.
film credit to your name, right?
We're going to dig it up. It's not on. It's on YouTube. We'll find it.
Please do. I would love to see that again. I want to talk a little bit about, we've been talking about Notre Dame movies. If you were to rank your top 5, Don, what would that look like, that list?
Well, starting from number 5 and counting backwards, they're pretty obscure. One is not really a movie, it's an episode of The Simpsons.
Okay, yeah.
Where Marge dreams of Protestant heaven and Catholic heaven. And when she dreams of Catholic heaven, we see river dance and the guys are all wearing Notre Dame t-shirts dancing. So that's number 5. Number 4, I would say, is, again, a very obscure film called Too Many Girls. And Desi Arnaz of, I Love Lucy, Lucy and Desi. He's a college student and he's debating over where to go to school, Notre Dame or USC. And his priest is really pressuring him to go to Notre Dame, but I won't tell you how it's no spoilers here. But then number 3, 2, and 1 all have to be the locker room speech in New Rock the All-American, of course, where we see that great Pat O'Brien delivery, but then it's also in Rudy as a plaque on the wall. And the first version of it is in this 1931 film called Spirit of Notre Dame. And that speech where the coach finds that defining moment in the story of George Gipp.
Yeah.
And how from the grave Gipp inspires them. That's always one of the plot points, as we call it in the films, but it's also that kind of epiphany where everything opens up and you get the goosebumps and the music wells up on the soundtrack and you want to go Notre Dame at that point. So any of those films.
I'm going to pose the same question to you now, Ted, the top 5, and disclaimer, you can't count your own films. You just did the 88 and 1, which was really, really well done, by the way. But we're going to take that one off the table for the time being. Top 5 Notre Dame films that you didn't put together.
Well,
in your opinion.
To add to Don's obscure television episodes, there's an episode of Friday Night Lights where Jason Street is recruited by Notre Dame. And so I think that's one of the more recent episodes. I also like the West Wing character, Jeb Bartlett, the president, Martin Sheen's character, who was a big, he's a Notre Dame grad. He's really into Notre Dame. So I don't know if there's a specific episode of that one, but The Spirit of Notre Dame is an interesting film that Don mentioned because that was actually the film that Knute Rockne was going to sign a contract to be in when his plane crashed on the way in Kansas. So I find that's kind of an interesting film. There's another film, Please Come Home, John Goldfarb, that was actually on the cover of Sports Illustrated, 1965, is that right? 1965, that was actually a pretty big Hollywood film that it kind of got pushed aside. I don't think it was a successful film. And then you go to, obviously, Rudy and Knute Rockne All-America. I would have to put Rudy as the top Notre Dame film of all time, simply because of not only its endurance and popularity amongst Notre Dame fans, but how it transcends Notre Dame. It's not just Notre Dame, it's sports films in general. That is considered one of the best all-time sports films. So I would put Rudy as number 1.
It's a lot more Hollywood and a lot less biopic.
Right,
I would say,
exactly.
Yeah.
I would add that it's also the top legendary film for the College of Holy Cross.
That's true, that's true.
So many of the students who go into Holy Cross go there because they've seen Rudy and they want to take the Rudy route into Notre Dame.
I had a student one summer from Guam, and I said, how did you get from Guam to Notre Dame? And she says, I just saw that movie, Rudy. And she said, I just thought that was a beautiful campus, and that's literally how she got here. So, great recruiting tool for Notre Dame.
No question. Well, guys, I appreciate both of your time for coming here. Ted,
Great
Don,
seeing you, Pete.
Good to see both again.
Always a
Thanks for
pleasure.
your time. Keep up the good work in FTT. We got to take a break right now, but before we do, we're going to head back into the social media center where